here at Vishwa. We started out in a small way. We started with computer training. Fortunately for us, Rotary and some people have donated computers to us. We teach 10th class students, inter students and degree students so that when they go for jobs, they don't get rejected. We teach the basics like Excel, Doc, ChatGPT, how to market. The basics we teach because most of them cannot afford computers and they have no access to them. And similarly, we have something called celebrations. Celebrations is celebrating your loved ones on their anniversaries, on their birthdays, on their death anniversaries. You can contribute to any of the causes that Vishwa showcases on its platform vishwa.org. You could, Annadanam for instance. There are a lot of people across the country who, when they go to hospitals, they come up from far off regions and the little money they have, they keep it aside for the treatment of the patient. They sleep on platforms, they hardly eat anything. And we give them food every afternoon on Fridays and it makes a lot of difference. There are similar such fundraisers. Please feel free to celebrate your loved ones with any of these causes.
Vishwa's commitment towards zero waste and the long way to go in achieving the goal begins with our material donation drive. Conducted twice a year during Diwali and Ugadi in Hyderabad, this drive collects clothes, books, toys and other used or semi-used items for the underprivileged. Contributions from over 615 plus families have benefited around 2,800 individuals, providing essential items and support, bringing hope and dignity to them. Through these efforts, we transform the waste of some into the treasure of others, promoting sustainability and community welfare.
Namaskaram, good morning, and welcome to Vishwa Talks. My name is Radhika, and thank you all for attending today's event and for those who are watching on YouTube Live. For new joiners, here's a little bit about Vishwa Talks. Vishwa Talks is a program to create awareness and to inspire all the participants in social change. So here we discuss and explore diverse opinions, different perspectives, issues, problems, and the solutions in various topics. So each webinar is an interactive session with a deeper understanding of the topic at hand. If you miss any part of the session and if you would like to go through the previous sessions, please visit our website or Vishwa Talks YouTube channel for a full library of past Vishwa Talks. So in today's Vishwa Talk, we are honored to invite our keynote speaker, Ms. Sarada Kalavapudi. Sarada Kalavapudi is highly accomplished professional with a diverse educational and professional background. Her academic journey includes a master's degree in psychology and education in market research from esteemed institutions like MICA and product innovation from Harvard University. With over 2 decades of work experience, Sharada has built a successful career primarily in product management, working with Fortune 500 companies in both B2C and B2B domains. Currently serving as the CEO of non-profit organization focused on biodiversity, conservation, and climate sciences, Sharada's career trajectory epitomes the spirit of lifelong learning and relentless pursuit of tackling complex challenges. With a firm belief in the value of perpetual education, she constantly seeks out challenging subjects to address. So before we get started into the main topic, I would like to inform the audience that our speaker will be taking the questions from you after the main talk. So please leave your questions in the chat or use raise hand tool after the main talk and we will allow you to ask your question in person. I request all of you to turn on your webcams for an interactive activity. So without further ado, let us give a warm welcome to our speaker, Ms. Sarada. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, Vishwa Talks, for inviting me to give this speech. I am not sure of the audience, but I just want to highlight what Radhika mentioned earlier. I am no biodiversity specialist or no scientist, a regular citizen like you all who had interest in this topic and learned along the way. So if you all have any queries at the end of this discussion, please feel free to share and to be a discussion mode rather than an expert sharing her views. So I'll just share my presentation now. Radhika, I think you'll need to give me access to.
Access is given, ma'am.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about biodiversity conservation in the era of climate change. So before we actually dive into the topic, I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what is biodiversity. We keep hearing about climate change quite often in the regular news and also in our discussions along with our colleagues and friends. But biodiversity is one of those topics that is not often discussed. So I'm glad that Vishwa Talks has given me an opportunity to talk about this. Biodiversity broadly refers to the different types of and the diverse kinds of living things that are there in a given area. To simply put, again, I'm hoping that there are a lot of students and youngsters in this audience too. If you're, for example, having a thali and you have a mix of different types of food, the diversity in the Indian thali is something where it gives a very easy understanding of what diversity is. We have a mix of things that come from various regions of the country. Think of life also in the similar way. If you look at a small patch of land and you say, what is the life there? It's not just the birds, it's not just the animals, it's not just the trees that are there. We're also referring to the microorganisms that are there in the soil at that point of time, the fungi that is there. So all the life that is given, that you can see in a particular, or not even see, present in a given patch of land, we refer that to as the biodiversity of that land. And why is this important is, I think we keep forgetting, humans being who we are, that we are one of the many, many species that are there on this world. And we've not even mapped all the species. So in the million species, if we were to think of us as a part of the ecosystem on the earth, then we are living along with all of these living beings. And so it's very important to understand that being a part of that, how do we give back and what do we take from them and how much do we take from the rest of the life? So biodiversity sort of studies what is this mix that is given in a patch of land. And here I want to just share a small hypothesis. It sounds very scientific, but it's very simple to understand. This image that you're seeing is a close-up of a flight. And all of us have been on the flights, we've seen, or even in the buses. This is a picture of an aircraft, but it could be anything else. It is held together by these rivets. These rivets are like these little screws that are holding up the metal together. Now, Dr. Paul Ehrlich is a scientist. He's written a hypothesis. It's called rivet popper hypothesis. What this broadly says is, imagine that you're flying in this flight. Okay, you're moving from one city to another. You're boarded the flight, and the flight is taken off. You're flying now, and each one of these rivets is coming off, or it's falling apart. Okay. Now, one rivet comes off, the flight will be intact. A handful of rivets are coming off. Even then, the flight will continue on its path. But imagine you will reach a certain point where a particular rivet will sort of undo the whole flight. And then you're going to have a free fall, right? So similarly, if you were to think of Earth as an ecosystem and all these rivets are different species that are there, we are losing species. And when I say species, I'm referring to the technical term that our scientists use for each life form. Each life form has a particular name. We are called Homo sapiens. In the similar way, we have a name for every life form that we've identified on Earth so far. There are many more unknown. But imagine each species is falling off, meaning that disappearing from the face of Earth. A few species are lost, nothing is going to happen. Our life on Earth will continue. Earth will continue to be as it is, or will thrive rather without us. But at some point, some species, when they're lost, the whole thing will come undone. And this is what the scientists have been alerting us to, that the biodiversity of a given area, we're losing out species every hour, every day, every year, continuously. And we'll reach a tipping point when some species disappear, and along with that, the balance on the earth will be gone. I'm using very broad terms, and if there are any scientists here, please excuse me for using such simplistic terms. But I'm just trying to get the message across that the biodiversity loss is so huge right now, and we'll go to that topic in a little while. So this hypothesis sort of is giving us a story that it's called the rivet popper hypothesis. We lose few species, we lose life, and we lose the balance on Earth. So when I'm talking about species, we always keep hearing about save the tiger, or the polar bear on the Arctic circles. These are the images that come to us as soon as we think of conservation or life that is being saved, other than human beings, of course. So some of these species are called keystone species, and what this means is that that particular species has much more impact on the life and the ecosystem around it as compared to the rest of the species. And the most famous one, popular one that we keep hearing about is the tiger. So let's say if a tiger perishes, then the animals that it eats, the herbivores, will also be multiple in number, and they will come and hit our grasslands or eat much more than the population would increase. So it sort of disturbs the balance of the life, and hence they're called keystone species. Now we're losing these also at a very rapid rate. So you can imagine the imbalance that will be caused in the ecosystem. Now, this is a little note. I didn't mean to put up the whole thing, but just to show you that humans, we as a species, are referred to as hyper keystone species. What this means is that we have a much, much higher impact on the ecosystem around us. And we're very immune to this knowledge because we take it for granted. From when we are born to what we are doing on a daily basis, it is a set path. It's like a rail track, right? We continue our motions, we go along because someone has set it and there was never any problem before. And we continue to believe that there will be no problem in the future. And we sort of behave the way we do. I don't need to enlist all of those. But we have such a big impact on the rest of the species in the ecosystem that we are referred to as a hyper keystone species. So I just want to step back and look at ourselves for a minute. Just think of this, okay? If you see the circle, and I don't have a pointer, we are on a virtual call, but the point where you see this 4, 5, 6, 7.3 million years ago, I hope it's zooming in, Radhika. But this is where Earth started. So I'm not even counting the numbers, but these many million years ago is when humans think Earth started. I'm not going into the philosophical and the technical language, but that's how old the Earth is. Now, you look at the timeline that has passed since from then on, and you come to this extreme end. Okay, this is where human beings came. So if you were to compare the timeline from when Earth started, and again, simplistic words, and you think it's 1 24-hour day, then we came in maybe at 11:45 p.m. So that's how young a species we are if you compare ourselves to from when Earth has evolved. And in that little time, now we are causing so much of havoc as a species that we are destroying what has been a part of the Earth for so long, the life, the ecosystem around us. So this chart sort of enlists how relatively a new species we are in terms of existence, but causing so much havoc. So far, again, I'll just go back to this. But in this whole circle of time that Earth has existed, what scientists tell us is that there have been big 5 mass extinctions so far. Again, I'm not going into the technicalities, but just to get a feel, these are like millions of years ago, right? And the most famous one that we know is the famous stories that we keep hearing about dinosaurs disappearing. That's the last mass extinction we had. So what happened in these mass extinctions is that a majority of the species got wiped out. So it's a very natural process for Earth to go through this. Scientists have sort of enlisted how often this has happened. And they say that from when Earth has evolved 5 times, 90% of the species or 70% of the species got wiped out. But now what is happening is, since man has started, or human beings have started to behave the way they're behaving now, which is again the consumerism, and after the industrialization has started, what is happening is we're seeing a huge spike in the number of species that we are losing. So if you look at the timeline and the graph, from 1800 to 1900 onwards, you suddenly see this spike. This is what the scientists are saying, that we're losing species. And the reason for this uptick is our industrialization. Okay, when humans started farming, they moved away from being hunters and gatherers to settling down in a village and started agriculture. There was not so much of an issue. But when we started burning fossil fuels, when we started industrializing, when we started consumerism, that's when we are seeing a lot of these species being lost. So what scientists say is we are in the middle of what is called as sixth mass extinction. Scientists discuss and some say yes, some say no. But just for you all to get a feel of what we are doing, at the bottom of this picture, you see that's when Earth has started, and we've crossed so many eras. So these are all the names that scientists have given us. A lot of extinctions have happened. We are somewhere, we came in onto the Earth maybe as Homo sapiens. We have ancestors who are not Homo sapiens, like hominins and Neanderthals and so on. But Homo sapiens, broadly, I can say 10,000 years ago, right? And we, in that little time, as I've explained earlier, we are causing havoc. And so that's the reason scientists are now calling this as Anthropocene. And when I say Anthropocene, anthropo, as most of you would know, refers to human beings. That's why we have anthropology and so on. So in scientific terms, currently this is actually called Holocene, but some scientists refer to it as the Anthropocene because we are causing the sixth mass extinction. And this has started somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, is what the scientists say. So coming back to biodiversity, I keep talking about the loss that is happening. There are big 5 threats that are happening. Okay, human beings, the way we've been using land and sea, whether it is our shipping containers roaming around and trawlers shipping away, fishing away, or it is the land usage where we have urbanization expanding, we're burning up the forests, where human population is increasing. So land and sea usage is one of the biggest one. Pollution, species overexploitation, whether it is our consumption of meat or overfishing. And then we have climate change, one of the reasons. And then the invasive species and diseases. So today I want to focus on climate change and why it is such a bigger threat than all the others that we've been reading up on so far. And also I just wanted to highlight, why is it that we should worry about biodiversity, right? I mean, some scientists are saying, okay, the ecosystem will get disturbed. But even for human beings, from our point of view, just remember that all our economics, all our food chains, our living on this earth is all dependent on the ecosystem around us. And we are very immune to this on a daily basis because everything is ready-made for us. We have lost our touch with from where we've come. I mean, out of Africa, millions of years ago, our ancestors would have stepped out with the hope that they get easy access to food. But that easy access to food has now become just our life around convenience, comfort, and it's very difficult to get out of it. I'm not saying that we're at fault, but we've been led up to this point because of our own ancestors, and maybe I would blame my current generation for this. But now that we are here, what does it mean when we say that there is a loss that's going to happen? Okay, so our food chains can get disrupted, and tomorrow some scientists may come up with a very innovative way of popping a tablet and maybe we'll be good with no food. And there may be questions around, so what, we will manage. But we are dependent on almost every part of our life on what we call as nature and the natural systems, whether it's our fuels, whether it's the materials that we use. We keep thinking we are in the midst of using just plastic, but just go back to how you started your day. Not just the food, your fossil fuels are coming from Earth. So all the natural materials and the ecosystem around us can be very easily trampled and disturbed if we don't curtail the biodiversity loss. So this is a metric just saying that 44 trillions of your economic value generation is directly tied on nature. Okay. Now, so because you want to conserve this biodiversity, you want to make sure that we don't lose it, what is it that the world is doing, right? So there are broadly 2 ways that people conserve biodiversity. When I say people, I mean scientists or citizens and everywhere across the globe. There are 2 ways that we've been looking at it so far. There is in situ conservation and there is ex situ conservation. So in situ is whatever is there, you leave it guarded. So we have national parks, our wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, conservation reserves, and so on. And interestingly, in India, we have something called as sacred groves. Okay, there is a typo there from where I picked up this information. It says groves, but sacred groves is what I'm referring to. So in the Hindu way of life, our temples always had land around the temple where the local species were conserved. So whether we call them as medicinal plants, aromatic plants, forest trees, grasses, shrubs, flowering plants, and so on, every temple had an acre of land where this would be protected. And this was done in a very automated way where we didn't understand the significance of it. But even there now we've lost. So in a very natural way, our lifestyle sort of evolved around having conservation taken care of for every few kilometers. Wherever there was a temple, the local species were conserved. But unfortunately, during colonization and the era after that, we've lost interest in these, we've lost those lands. And of course, given our population, we've expanded so much into the urbanization, or whether we're using the rest of the land for agriculture, we've lost these conservation points. So there are other ways that conservation happens. It's called ex situ, which is basically you bring those plants and animals from elsewhere and keep them locked up in a different place so that it's suitable, and we continue to have access to those seed banks and gene banks. So in Norway, there is a shelter that is under one of the bigger mountains where we have seeds given from every country, where it's frozen and kept for future generations. Tomorrow, if there is some catastrophe, that could be the only place where we have access to the seeds. And why are seeds so important? Again, from our daily understanding and from where we get our food and what we do with the rest of the plants, we run on automated basis. Someone is producing the food, we're eating it, and we forget about it. If there are no seeds, then the next generation is not going to grow, right? And in the case of agriculture and horticulture, because it's a commercial element, someone is preserving the seeds, whether it is the companies or the farmers or people who are producing food are taking care of it. So we do not know anything about it. But imagine the rest of the species, whether it's the forest species, whether it's the grasses, something that is non-commercial. We do not have a way of conserving these seeds, and it's critical that we do so, because the technical term that is used is the germplasm. Tomorrow you want to revive any of these, that will be the only source. And so ex situ conservation sort of takes care of it, but not enough is done in the world. And now to add to this, what is happening is wherever we had these ex situ conservation points, most of them for some reason were along the coast. Take it Florida, or even in China and Singapore, for example, the botanical gardens, they're all very close to the coast. And as the coastlines increase, and this has now already happened in US, where some of these botanical gardens are being lost because there's a continuous flooding of water and so on. So these are not enough. In the era of climate change, these are not helping. And again, just a bigger point on biodiversity conservation. So there is a habitat conservation, rare ecosystems, connectivity. When I say connectivity, what does this mean? Let's say, for example, elephants are in one particular forest and they move to another grassland and when there is rain or summer or seasonally they migrate. What we have done is we have built roads across them, we've built construction activities, we've built bridges, we've built, humans have basically intervened, and that road is cut off for them. So imagine you are not able to go to another city because the road is cut off. We talk about it every day when there is a rain, right? Imagine the animals for their food, if they have to cross and it's cut off, what happens? So these are some of the, what should I say, the natural resources which need to be conserved, which we're not doing today. And what is causing this change in the biodiversity is, of course, our usage of, the land management, the way we do. We also have something called as invasive species, and this is very important, which is basically you bring one species from one particular land and put it into another, it could become invasive. It overtakes the rest of the species that are there. And sometimes even neem can be an invasive species, and this is a very dangerous statement for me to make, but I'm just saying There are so many seeds of neem trees that get dropped everywhere. And if the neem tree grows, we will not cut it down because we believe it's sacred, but it also can eat up the resources that are important for the local species. Sometimes eucalyptus plays this role. So invasive species also play a huge role in loss of biodiversity, and of course pollution and our usage of the other fossil fuels. So I just want to come to the other topic, what we started off with, saying that in the era of climate change, why is biodiversity conservation even more important? So this is something that UN has put out, and we've heard about climate change, but what does it mean? In simple words, basically Earth is heating up. And the reason it's heating up has always happened, from when Earth has evolved. It's not new, but the temperature increase could be as high as 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees, and that may feel very, very small number when someone is hearing it for the first time. But let me give you an analogy. I'm sure most of you all would have stood in front of a stove, heating up or boiling milk. As long as the milk is boiling and it stays inside the vessel, you're waiting for it to finish, right? But there is a tipping point after which the milk overflows, and a lot of us run to sort of switch it off. Earth is right now somewhere close to that tipping point, and we don't know when it's going to sort of, draw the analogy, overflow. But the temperature is increasing, and I'll just show you the statistics for that. Now, to look at this image, what this text says is basically we're sort of having a blanket around the Earth, which are the greenhouse gases. And greenhouse gases are making sure that this heat stays close to Earth. So earlier when the Earth was getting heated up, there was a way for this heat to sort of radiate back into space. And pardon me, I'm using very simple language here. These are not technical terms, but just to get the idea across. Now, what we are doing is we're increasing these greenhouse gases by burning fossil fuels, petrol, diesel, natural oil, gases, oil, whatever we're burning up is releasing carbon dioxide into the space, into the space around us. So once this is happening, the greenhouse gases, as they're increasing, they're sort of forming up a blanket around us, and that blanket is keeping the Earth even hotter. So that's the reason we are saying that when the temperature increases for Earth, we are at that tipping point. And there is a Paris Agreement that was attended by all the countries that kept, that have announced that 1.5 to 2 degrees is. So, I'm sorry about that. Just give me a second, please. Just give me a second. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, we were talking about the increase in temperature on Earth. Now, one of the scientists has put this forth. It's called climate stripes. And what they've done is from 1860 onwards till the current year, 2021, not current year, sorry, 2021, they've taken the average temperature of the Earth. And so if you see each year, you see the blue stripe, relatively, what should I say, a normal or a cooler temperature. And as we are hitting after 2010, the average temperature of Earth is increasing drastically, where you can see these red stripes. And so they've used this climate stripes, and you can actually go to the site climatestripes.info, which gives you more about this. And what you're seeing here is a screenshot of the Hyderabad city itself. On the left, you can see I've taken Asia, India, Hyderabad. And you can, when you visit this website, you can see for the entire Earth, you can see for India and so on. And the story is the same, where the temperature is increasing year on year. And we humans feel, yes, okay, once in a while we feel, okay, it's getting hotter, but then we go back into our AC rooms and everything seems fine. But these increasing temperatures are resulting in a lot of changes which we are not noticing on a daily basis. And what I mean by that is, so this is the same climate stripes, but for the entire globe. At the top, you can see that's the climate temperature. And at the bottom, this is a measurement given for biodiversity. That's the number of species that are there in the world, which are basically the count. The darker the green color is, more species are there. And as you keep moving towards 2010. I think the years are missing here, but this is from 1970 to 2018. And to your right-hand side is 2018. And you can see the green color almost disappearing, which is basically how the species are being lost year on year as the temperature is increasing. So this is basically a snapshot of that. And while I spoke about it, I just want to touch upon this topic, which is what we keep hearing about sustainable development goals from UN. The 17 of them, and I think most of you all would have, be discussing this on a daily basis, where we're talking about alleviation of poverty, alleviation of the trouble that women are in, build toilets, and so on. So each SDG, most companies and people who are working in this space, along with the UN, focus on what is the economy side of things, which is basically we should remove poverty so that human beings don't suffer. We should make sure that women are educated. We should make sure that there is enough food on the table for people to eat, and so on. But just think about this, right? If you look at the SDGs that are there for protecting the biosphere, and the scientist who put this together is treating it like a cake. He says the basis is the biosphere. If you don't protect your water, you don't protect earth, you don't protect your seas and oceans or the life on earth, then imagine if this collapses, then what is the use of talking about society and economy? Those may not even exist, right? Tomorrow we may not have a home, our only planet, because we have been foolish enough to make sure that our destruction is endless. And then it's very difficult for humans to sort of accept this. We continue to burn our fossil fuels. Even today when I came in in the car and I burned the petrol. That's how we are. But as a humanity, as a species, if you were to look at ourselves, we have given into the comfort of and the convenience of living, that we've forgotten that we're a part of an ecosystem where we're one of the many species. And we believe we're smarter, but I think we are smart only to fight with each other. As a species, compared to the rest, we seem to be very dumb because we are collapsing our own home and we don't have another home. And so this is, the scientist says that if you don't take care of the biosphere, the rest of the layers of the cake and the cherries on the top will not matter, which is what we are focusing on today. So I come from a non-profit called Dharmavana Nature Arc. And what we do is, it's a small dot in the ocean. We care for 400 acres where we sort of protect the flora and the fauna. This is in Bhongir area. We also invite a lot of researchers and people who are in the forestry teams to come and use the space for both learning and also research. We also have the Center of Excellence for Biodiversity and Climate Sciences, where we're trying to address whatever we've seen as the issues so far. And it's just a beginning. We really don't know if our work will certainly make an impact. We do hope so. But like I said, it's a dot in the ocean and much more needs to be done. So this is on Dharmavana. Radhika, how am I on the time?
It's okay, ma'am. You can take your time.
Okay, so I thought I would be taking 40 minutes to reach this point, but I'll just speak a little more on Dharmavana then. So this non-profit, what we do is in this 400 acres, we take care of forest species, specifically from the Deccan and Deccan, which is where Hyderabad is, and also the Eastern Ghats, which is the coastline that you see in a little bit in Andhra Pradesh and a little bit in Orissa. Those forest species we conserve here. And it's very, when I started in this space, I found it very interesting that we will not survive without the forests around us. They are the green lungs for us, without which we will not have too much of oxygen in the air. But we do not care for the forest. We expect that there is a government team that is going to take care of it, and so be it. But we're losing forests very quickly because there are very unseasonable forest fires that we're seeing across the globe. And so earlier, when there was a forest fire or a few years ago, what would happen is, it's a very natural process in nature where the seeds would fall to the ground. There is a fire, but these seeds are there under the ash and they would rejuvenate and the forest would sprout back. So it will take ages for the forest to sort of rejuvenate, but it would come back because nature takes care of itself. But now what is happening is these fires are unseasonable. Okay. They're not coming in as per the season that was occurring earlier. So the fires occur even before the flowers are pollinating, the trees are pollinating or the seeds there. So when the fire occurs, there are no seeds on the ground. So there is no way for the forest to sort of rejuvenate. What does that mean? Once those species and trees are lost, they're lost forever. And somewhere within those, even if we as a selfish species were to sort of look at it, think of this: when COVID hit us, or tomorrow there may be even more diseases that will come in, a lot of the solutions in that, what will be the solutions will come from nature. And one of these species that is lost may actually have the secret to something that we need in the future. Even if we are a selfish species and we look at it that way, what we are doing is we are burning up our species, literally. And then with our human activity, anthropocentric activities, so to say, are not just causing damage to our own health and our own lifestyle and what we're doing to ourselves, but we're disturbing the entire ecosystem and life around us. And remember this, that when species are lost, Earth will rejuvenate. So nature as a whole has a way of sort of recuperating very quickly. It is cyclical. And maybe the species will come back, the ecosystems will balance themselves out, everything will be fine, except that we may not be a party to it. Once we perish, some other species will take that place. And it's as, it sounds very big, but basically we've kicked ourselves out of our own home. And the home will flourish again without us. And we will not even be able to watch it happen, because we will perish. So that's the activity that we are doing. So in this little space, we are trying to protect the seeds of the forest with the hope that in the future generations, if ever there is a need for the germplasm, it is protected. And the way we do it is we hire the local, this is in Bhuvanagiri, Bhongir Fort, you would have seen. It's close to that, an hour's drive from ORR in the Hyderabad city. There we've hired around 60 people who are local villagers who've been working in this space for the last decade or so. And they've been trained, and so they sort of conserve this land, where we also bring in what scientists call as rare, endangered, and threatened species, especially the flora, and make sure that they're safeguarded here. We're also now this year looking at building water structures so that we can conserve aquatic life. I'm not going to the website and so on, because I'm not talking specifically about Dharmavana, but I want to just give an example of another way to sort of conserve as compared to what we've seen earlier, like zoos and biodiversity, biospheres. Even private individuals and private entities and industries can do this. Industries are beginning to do this because they're forced to. They're supposed to have a green belt around their industries. But there is a lot more that can be done. And that's why private participation is so important. It's important that we as citizens understand where we are heading and what little we can do to contribute. We make that effort. Government can only do so much. So it is private participation that is really, really needed. And this talk from Vishwa, which Dharmavana is participating as a part of our Dharmavana Citizen Series and Citizen Connect, I hope that if not completely, but at least there is a bit of understanding of why this problem is so huge. And if you all have any questions, then I'll take them and try to answer as best as I can. Radhika?
Yeah.
Sharda?
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Sharda?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, hi. Sharda, do you want to tell them also that we are interested in as a invest into any climate science startups with
Sure.
IPs,
Yeah. Sure. So as I was sharing, we have both the 400 acres of land which is conserved, and then we have a Center of Excellence for Biodiversity and Climate Sciences, where we work with scientists to sort of document and digitize our learnings. As a part of this, we also look at startups and the youngsters and the researchers who are working in the area of climate sciences. And anyone who's trying to address this problem, we want to pay close attention to, either to connect them to the rest of the industry or even invest. So any youngsters, any researchers who are primarily in climate sciences spaces, climate tech, but most importantly, what we call as CCUS, which is carbon capture, utilize and storage. Again, basically what we're saying is take away the carbon dioxide that is there in the air to make sure that the air around us is cleaner, and also the greenhouse gases don't increase. So for whatever you do to remove this carbon dioxide, that entire industry and space is called CCUS, carbon capture, utilize and storage. So if anyone is doing anything to fix that, then we would surely want to speak to them and connect with them. Okay, and I wanted to end on a note where Earth is healing itself. Like I said, it will recover. So this is an example. They found that at the reactors where Chernobyl in Russia, where we had this huge nuclear disaster, life is sprouting back. And not just ordinary life, but life that can absorb radiation. And this is what I mean when I say that Earth will recover. We may not be a part of it. Okay, so I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, then please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mami, for such a lovely session. Like all the time we thought just plant trees and everything will be okay, but we did not think in this way. So it's an eye opener for most of the audience and everyone. And before we move on to the Q&A, I would like to request the audience to take 30 seconds to answer a poll. The poll is to understand you a little better so that we can better curate the topics that we bring to you. And I would like to express my gratitude to everybody who has joined in today's session and for their presence and contribution in making today's webinar a success and interactive session. And I would like to express my gratitude to our speaker, Ms. Sharada Kalvapudi garu. Yeah. So we will move on to Q&A, ma'am.
Sure.
There are so many questions, acknowledgements in the chat box. Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to look at the chat box and then respond, or do you want to open up the audio for them?
Yeah, a few people are raising their hands. We will ask them to unmute and ask the questions. So we have Shmuel. Hi, Shmuel. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, now you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
I
can.
can.
Okay. Thank you very much. A very interesting presentation. And I want to ask you a question. How conservation biodiversity can support improvement food security in the world?
So if I may repeat your question, you're asking how biodiversity conservation can help the security of the world. Is that what I heard?
Food security.
Food security. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So today we just spoke about biodiversity conservation as a whole, but there is a complete different stream where people are focusing on agriculture and biodiversity conservation. So for example, in India, our staple diet in the South especially is rice. And recently now we're reviving all our old food species, which are millets. In Telugu, we call it as ragi and jonna and others, which was our staple diet that our ancestors and even my parents had as a regular meal. But we forgot about them. And those species, when they were grown as agriculture produce, consumed much less water than we do today with rice. Rice is one of the most water taking consuming species. So now the government and also the citizens are looking at reviving another staple diet, which is using millets. And millets may actually be the answer to our water problems. And tomorrow, our agricultural produce and food security may come in by using these species, which are not as water consuming as rice or even wheat. So the entire FAO, I think it's called, the UN division that looks at food security, they are concentrating on millets. So there again, a big role was played by the seeds that were conserved by regular citizens in India, who have conserved these different types of millets. And I would say that biodiversity conservation is the answer for the food security too. And this is one part of it. The second one is Singapore recently said that the protein consumption in their country can be through insects. They've approved it. And so there is a lot of work that is going on in seeing which insects that, when produced economically, can become a part of their food, everyday food. And so, again, it's some insects which may have lost could have been a good protein source. And now we're again trying to sort of make sure that those are conserved. So there are different answers to this. Same ditto with the seafood algae that we are putting now to use, not just for human consumption food chains, but also for the animal husbandry industry, where there is a lot of protein intake. So again, there are different types of algae have been conserved by a few of the citizens. This was, and so again, it's a spread of answers, but short answer is yes. Biodiversity conservation is the answer to food security.
Yes, this said, okay, I have a second question. This said that biodiversity can support improvement social and economic well-being in poor countries of Africa and Latin America.
Yes, for sure. Again, the answer lies in how we conserve, and my short answer would be yes. There is no other way. We every day when we look at the news, we look at it through an economics perspective. But if you look at it from this conservation or the biodiversity aspect, you will see all the answers there. If tomorrow Africa is the answer for our food chain, then automatically their future is sort of safeguarded. So again, short answer is yes. Biodiversity conservation is the answer.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So we have gifts from Forest. Sir, you can please unmute and ask your question.
Thank you so much for giving me this chance. Okay, so I'm from India as well. So actually gift from forest we have started for like जैसे मैम ने बताया कि वहाँ पे 400 एकड़ का लैंड है एंड वो जगह को बायोडाइवर्सिटी को कितना बेहतर बनाना चाहते हैं. तो जस्ट लाइक दैट आई हैव वेरी स्मॉल क्वेश्चन लाइक जिस तरह से मैम ने इतना बढ़िया फॉरेस्ट बना है तो उनको हम हर एक जगह पे किस तरह से और बना सकते हैं. तो अलग अलग प्लेटफॉर्म से अलग अलग कंट्रीज में हम उसी तरह से उन्हीं के लर्निंग्स के साथ हम अलग अलग 400 एकर्स लैंड्स बना के वहां पे हम बायोडाइवर्सिटी कैसे बना सकते हैं. एंड सेकंड थिंग इज कि हमारा जो इकोनॉमी है व्हाट आई बिलीव इज हमारा जो इकोनॉमिक पार्ट है जो एसडीजीज के वो जो वेडिंग केक इट वाज रियली नाइस प्रेजेंटेशन एंड जो इकोनॉमिक केक है तो इकोनॉमिक का जो चेरी ऑन टॉप है वो इकोनॉमी हमारे बायोडाइवर्सिटी और हमारे सोसाइटी को मिला के आता है हमें. तो फॉर नाउ लाइक वी आर प्रैक्टिसिंग लाइक हमने इट्स बिन 1 ईयर हमने एक रैपर भी नहीं तोड़ा है. So we haven't eaten dairy milk or any chips. Okay, so for like that, we are practicing such kind of thing. And just like Samuel sir also mentioned, how the food security also coming in part. So we don't need much food. We need some sort of food. For 3-time meal or 2-time meal, it's enough for our, to maintain
So
our
what is
body.
the question? Sorry, the second question. Yeah.
So how to, sorry, the first question itself, how to
Yes.
create forest in different places. So as of we have a startup, like हमने अभी एक नया startup run किया है, Gifts from Forest. So what we do is celebrate people's birthday who plant trees around the world. So we are connected to few NGOs and few people We had just started 2 months back, and we are from Pune starting out. So we want to create forests, just like you mentioned, like 400 acres are there. So we want to connect people, and our main vision is to pave a path towards जहाँ पे नेचर एंड ह्यूमंस अगेन यूनाइट हो सकते हैं. जैसे आपने बताया, एंड इट वाज रियली प्रेजेंट एंड इट फेल्स रियली कनेक्टिंग टू यू कि इतना बढ़िया, जैसे आप ही जो बोट में, हम भी वही बोट में. तो दैट्स व्हाई माय क्वेश्चन है कि किस तरह से हम अलग अलग जगह में ये लैंड को प्रोसेस कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज इट्स रियली हार्ड. Yeah.
Correct. I'll take your first question, and I may not be able to answer in Hindi. I understood your question, so I'll speak in English. And that's the reason I was saying that private participation is very important. India as a whole, if you look at it, the government also has some commitments to the global forum. It is called Nationally Determined Contributors. So they're called NDCs, where we have to show that our afforestation has increased by X percentage. And this is a commitment that every country is making as a part of the UN. There is a Paris Agreement and COP, Conference of Parties, which happens regularly. So as a part to that, India has committed to it. So we need to touch next percentage. I will not go into the statistics. But what has happened is the government, from its perspective and side, can only do so much. Whatever is there, they can protect. They can't take away private lands and say, okay, we're going to make a forest. It is up to the private citizens and, like I was sharing, industries and people who are philanthropists to come forward and say, okay, we're going to protect and do, whether you call it growing afforestation and I would request you to move away from just planting trees to look at it from a composite view, where you conserve the biodiversity of that given area. So private participation, I feel, is the answer. Government is doing its bit because they've committed to it, and they are trying to protect as many areas as possible. UNDP has something called as Other Effective Conservation Measures. It's called OECM, and they're trying to encourage private parties to sort of come forward and conserve. Industries have green belts. What can we ask them to do more? For example, mining companies today, before they start mining, they have to commit to restore the land again once the mining project is over. So a lot of things the government has put into place, not just in India, but across the globe. But they can only do that much. And given our population, you cannot go and say, okay, private parties give it away. It is up to the, I would hate to say this, but the richer citizens to sort of commit to this. And that's why these programs like this, where we are sharing why this is so important, will move the needle. And like you committed, like you said, that you yourself are working, which means that there is a lot of awareness in the youngsters too. So actually, you are the answer to the question. What you are doing is the answer to your first question. We need more people like you.
Thank you. And how can we connect you? Because we have, I believe we have some solutions like for the future modes. Like that's why we called as a future forest future solutions. So, how can we connect you?
I'll leave my mail ID in the chat box here, and then we can connect.
Yes, we'll connect you soon, ma'am. This is a very insightful presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a question from Mr. Adi. Can you please tell me what is the effective measure to conserve nature with respect to population growth?
Okay. I wish I had a single line and one bullet answer for that. The answer is we are still figuring it out. See, we can't stop the population from consuming. That includes me and you. How do you sort of ensure that human population, the way it is growing versus the conservation? It's a question of balance. And that answer, there is no answer to balance. So how do you reach that right balance? You'll only know when you reach it. So there is no single answer. But there are some scientists who believe that Earth can surely take care of many more human beings than there are on Earth today. And then there are another set of scientists who say that we've reached our peak point. So there is a mixed conversation going on, but it all boils down to how much is each human being sort of consuming, right? And that is growing very, very fast. If that is not curtailed, then even if the population reduces a little bit or really explodes, it all comes back to our consumption patterns, which there is no sign of slowing down. I mean, if we all ask ourselves, we will not give up our convenience and comfort to just say, okay, I'm consuming less. We've crossed that threshold. So maybe science will give us some answers to the CCUS that's Harish Karu was referring to. We may find solutions, or something like COVID comes back in a different form, and then we're forced to do it. Earth, like I said, Earth will take care of itself. Whether we're a party to it or not, we don't know.
So we have another question from Mr. Incredible Traveler. That's what he named himself. I'm from Shimla. How can I start climate change program? I have done my graduation in BSc degree in zoology, botany, chemistry. Now I am doing masters in journalism and mass communication in Himachal Pradesh. So how can I start climate change program is his question.
See, I think a few years ago I was at the same point as him, and one thing that really helps is most of this information, what even I've shared today, is all available on internet, and it's a boon in that way where you can read up, look at a lot of practices that are going on, and join one of those non-profits or even a private party that is already doing it. Learn along the way, and then you will figure your own path. But the starting point is always learning, and for that there is publicly available information almost. There is too much of it actually now, so it's a question of focus. So I would request you to read up and then look up for either startups or youngsters who are dealing with this already and join them, and it will give you a flavor of what can be done.
There's a question from Dr. Usha. There is this dangerous trend of nurturing pets, especially cats and dogs, which in long run may affect the populations of these pets, especially exotic varieties. What do you think about it?
I'm also a pet owner, a pet mom. As a mom, I would say this question upsets me quite a bit. But again, I request you all to read this book. It is called Homo sapiens by, I think it's Yuval. I hope I'm getting his name right. So if there was ever an alien coming to Earth, right, we all assume that they'll reach out to human beings. We are very smug in our understanding of ourselves. We think we are the kings and the queens of this place, the entire Earth. And so we believe they'll come and connect with us. There are scientists, and this book also, one of the things that he says is they may be actually connecting with the grasses. They may be connecting to the amount of animals that are there as livestock, or they may be connecting to the dolphins in the sea. You don't know. So just that will give you a flavor of answer. The spread of species is very imbalanced, and pets are a part of that. But if you look at it, pets also have evolved. For example, what scientists tell us about dogs is wolves started following human beings when they realized that wherever human beings are, they eat the flesh and they throw the bones and then they move on, when we were hunter-gatherers. And these wolves would go and get easy access to bones. That's how they started following us. And over a period of time, just like we've domesticated plants for our agriculture, these were also domesticated and they became the best friends. So there is a history to it. Overnight, nothing is going to change. But does it affect that species? No, those species are thriving at the expense of other species. So they've learned the art of survival. They're more resilient than most other species. That's where they are where they are. And then the species that has understood this the best, as per scientists, are the cows and the buffaloes, that we grow as livestock. They're pampered, they're fed every day, and they're taken care of. So if species evolution is the one that we're looking at, then they're actually thriving. We don't need to be worried about them. But there are other species that are falling apart because of that. That is questionable.
Ms. Richa, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Hello, Ms. Richa?
I think she's on mute. Richa, you're on mute.
Then we can we have Pradhan Birua. So you can unmute and ask your question.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Pradhan Birua, and I am from Jharkhand state. So in 2018, we started a small park. The park name is Biodiversity Park. It's situated in Pandrasali, Jharkhand. The main aim is to establish this park is to actually we teach tribal children free of cost. So basically, and many students they don't know Hindi language. So what we did in every species, two, three plants we planted in that area in biodiversity park. So whatever we planted, that is okay. But many plants that grown by self, by mother nature. So when we go every week to teach children to identify the plant's name. So that time even we don't know what is that plant's name. So I want to know if we start like biodiversity park, then how to categorize plants and how to teach children what is the name. Like chandan we can identify, mahogany we can identify, sesame we can identify, and many plants we can identify. But many plants that is we didn't planted. So how can
Yeah.
teach students what is the name of
Sir,
that plant?
Pradhan, excellent, sir, just to hear about your work. So every state has a biodiversity board, state biodiversity board. In Jharkhand also, I'm sure there is one. And the information will be publicly available. They maintain a catalog or nomenclature or the naming of species that are there in each state. And hopefully whatever plants you're finding, their names also will be with them. But you're right, sir. Today we don't have like a digital app, for example, where it should be able to recognize. When you use your Google phone, for example, when you use your photo option, you have Google Lens. Sometimes it detects the species, but most of the Indian species are still not updated, or they're not cataloged very well in the digital space, I'm saying. So it may or may not work with your Google phone when you use the Google Lens. That may, but otherwise the state biodiversity board will be your best. You can even send pictures to them, and I hope they answer. But they are responsible for this part of sort of cataloging what plants are there in each state, in each area, and so on.
Thank you, ma'am.
So as we are at 12 o'clock, we'll quickly close the session. We'll talk about upcoming talks and we'll continue with the question and answers after the closing. So our upcoming talk is on Introduction to Plasma Technology and its for sustainability. And it is by Meena Ravindran, who is Deputy Chief Executive at Department of Atomic Energy, India. So, and the next talk is on, that talk is on 17th of August, 2024, 11 a.m. And the next one is Indian Classical Dance by Dr. Sumitra Veluri, who has done PhD in Kuchipudi from Poti Sriramulu University. And this talk is on 24th August 2024, 11 a.m. The links to these talks are in the chat box. Please register whoever is interested in this. And we have done a workshop on making Hyderabad a zero-waste city, and we have declared to make it a zero-waste city by 2027. So as part of this event, we are conducting another workshop for gated communities, apartments, colonies, for a sustainable future. It would be in August. The dates will be announced soon. Yeah, you can register for this event who are part of communities, gated communities and apartments. The link is in the chat box. Yeah, we'll go through the question and answers now. There is a question from Gia Chabria. Hi, could you tell me a little more about funding opportunities for CCUS?
Okay. So this industry as such is very nascent. Not too many people talk about it. Climate tech is getting a lot of traction within climate tech. This is one of the verticals under that. So funding opportunities for climate tech is increasing in India. For example, even T-Hub, that is the one in Telangana state, and I've just realized that people are there from across the country. Telangana state has a specific vertical that sort of encourages startups that are in the climate tech and sustainability space. I think similarly there are others in their respective states. I'm not aware, but as a whole, in the entire world, again, there is sort of focus that is coming into this space. Just because, like I said, this is the only planet we have, and whatever little that can be done needs to be done. So there are funds that you can look up online that say climate funds or climate tech, sustainability tech. You can look for funds for CCUS, but I personally will not be able to guide you to any single fund as such.
So we have a question from Ashay Srivastav. As I'm working on nature education about sustainability and climate change, what do you think can be included in school education system? Practical ways to give knowledge.
I'm very personally very connected to this question, so I'll take a few minutes to answer. So I've thought through this multiple times, and one of the things that comes up is I can give you an example of how Japan and South Korea sort of tackle this. They don't think from the biodiversity perspective. They think about how youngsters can be attuned to what an active citizen should sort of focus on. So in their schools, they have something called as kitchen gardens. So in the school campus itself, there is an area allocated to almost every grade, and they grow right, and this starts right from their kindergarten. Kids grow their vegetables, and usually the schools themselves have school canteens, and they cook the food there. So the students are involved in that entire process. So each grade is given an option to sort of set the menu for a particular day. And when the food is being served, they can actually show up saying, this is the brinjal that our class grew, and this is what you're eating today. So there is a immediate connect to at least the food produce, and that is one of the easiest ways to sort of sensitize children to what we are talking about today in a bigger way. So school programs, I think it starts with the food, but unfortunately in our country, if you look at food wastage, one of the biggest sources of food waste, believe it or not, is from grown-up adults in residential schools and colleges. You take a plate, you serve the food, and out of that, 60% or 70% is dumped back into the dustbin, because we don't respect what we are taking onto the plate. We are not even aware what we are serving for ourselves, or we overserve and then forget about it. So these are simple things in terms of the changes that we can bring along. So sensitization program in schools, I think, can be done by mandating kitchen gardens and those spaces.
We have a question from J. Nagesha. Some of the diverse species are getting to be extinct, and is there a possibility that we can conserve all the flora and fauna may not be adaptive to all the conditions?
Yes, that is what this subject of biodiversity conservation focuses on. And just yesterday, I was a party to one of the conversations where government officials were discussing this. So there is active focus from forestry teams, and we have special biodiversity boards that are there in each of the states, and they are trying to do this. So we can't conserve 100%, because as a natural process, some species will be lost. It is the law of the nature. But what we are doing is we're ramping it up to such a high pace because of our activity. If we reduce the human activity, then automatically they'll be conserved, which is not possible. I mean, not feasible. But our state governments and central governments are doing their bit.
We have a question from Pradeep Pierre. Sir, you can unmute and ask your question.
Yeah. My question is, India being an agrarian country, we are also facing the malnutrition problem. Like around 800 and more than 820 people, even we are lacking in the hunger index also. See, as a thriving economy, and also like we are also means of producing, as you said, millets are the one of the answer for the alternative food production systems. So could you think that we have recent trend of about this sustainability, like plant-based foods, and also even the Singapore government is also introducing the lab-grown meat and meat. So do you think that it could feed the population and also save the animals? Because as you see in the industrial animal agriculture, plenty of animals have been kept in cramped conditions and all. So what are your views about it?
Yeah, I am not a scientist, so I don't have a firm answer. But I think we being sensitive to it is the first step, which is what is happening now. So we're really in that first phase. But certainly the youngsters are picking up businesses that revolve around this. So, for example, the last few years, you would have seen an uptick in people sort of packaging jackfruit powder. And that's an alternative to the maida that we eat. And it is also good for the diabetic patients. So there are new ways of looking at our own old foods, which we have forgotten how to use because of the commercialization of the packaged food that we are used to. There are people who are now selling all sort of in the name of biotics or what's it called, the prebiotics, or so you do have probiotics, sorry. So you do have a lot of youngsters and even the businesses looking at how we can sort of go back to our roots and our learnings of what foods are actually working for us. There is a focus on it, but it's very small. What we forget is 90% of, even including the farmers, what we eat is all coming in from commercial industry, right? And their scale and pricing is very important. Whatever we think, tomorrow I may say, okay, I'm going to plant 2 more jackfruit trees and then my food problem is solved. It is not, because it will only be for 1 or 2 people and we're feeding billions of people. So whenever we point fingers at industry, don't forget that scale and pricing is something that no one is able to crack. So in the sense, in a very sustainable way. So as long as we need cheaper food, we have to put up with what the industry is producing. But everyone is sensitized to this and they're revisiting. You would have seen how some of the foods now, the sugar levels have been brought down because of the wrong labeling and so on. So sensitization has happened. But the next level of what actually will change the needle, so to say, will come in the future, and I can't predict it. I wish I could.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have Ms. Tara raised hand. Ma'am, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay. She's also typed in a question. How do we balance the rights of future generation against the current generations, which needs current generation needs when it comes to biodiversity conservation?
I think programs like this help us to sensitize the citizens. And as someone pointed out rightly, the younger the students are when this is exposed or this is sort of taught, hopefully the next generation is much more aware than we are, because we blindly followed what was already set. And like I was saying earlier, I would blame my generation and my parents' generation. These 2 generations have sort of moved the needle far to the extreme, where our understanding of what we are doing was not actually thought through. We just followed. Consumerism happened, we followed. But now the youngsters are much more aware, and you will see them asking us many more questions, because literally their life is at stake. They are not giving the same fresh air, water, or the promise of what we got from our parents, other than the wealth that we keep talking about, which is intergenerational. What shape do we give to the next generation is also, like you rightly pointing out, very important. And the younger generation is today much more sensitive to it, and they're learning faster. And like I said, internet is the source more than learning from parents. But the adults, and I'm again saying my generation and so on, we do need our own level of sensitization to understand the depth of the problem, and talks like this that Vishwa is holding or Dharmavana is doing will help, or I'm hoping that will help.
So there's a question from Mr. Akhilesh. Ma'am, how can we support in Dharmavana nature arts programs?
So I will be sharing the connecting email ID with Radhika. I'm not able to type into your messenger for some reason. I'm not able to reach that point. I will share with Radhika and she'll put it up on chat. Please do share your thoughts. We are always interested in connecting with industries to see if they're willing to sort of use their CSR funds here. We are looking at youngsters who are cracking those research problems. We are looking at people who would want to bring their school children or college children to the space to understand better. And we can connect over this email ID that Radhika will soon share.
So we will share all the details to your registered email IDs. And we have a question from Mr. Anil Kumar Bishnoi. How conserve endangered black buck in India biodiversity?
I have no answer for this. I think it is one of the many species that is endangered. And again, what we classify as rare and endangered and threatened, broadly they're called as RET species. And you can look it up online, RET. And this list is given out by an international entity called IUCN. So they publish this list, and they also have a list for RET species for India. I think black buck is one of them. But beyond that, I don't have any more information to share.
There's a question from Ashwini. Ma'am, can you give me an insight on climate-induced migration?
Oh, yes. So I'll talk about like in a decade's time, right? Our immediate neighbor is Bangladesh, right? And they have one of the biggest shorelines. And it is already, the scientists are already saying that the sea levels there are increasing. What do you think will happen if the sea level increases a little more and those entire population needs to migrate? And this is a human example. So recently, one of the island countries, I think it is Barbados, had to migrate the entire population of one of their islands to another island because the sea level was increasing. And this is the first published information from a country. I think it's Barbados. We keep publishing this information on newsletters, and you can sign up for them too. But this is already happening in human populations that we're seeing visibly. What is happening in the animal population, what is happening in the plant life in terms of collapses are also being documented, but we don't see it in our news every day. But it's certainly happening. I mean, the climate change is pushing people to migrate, pushing life to migrate. Animals are moving to cooler climates because it's getting too hot. And when these mass migrations happen, a lot more wildlife and human conflict will increase. So we are seeing it. You keep seeing in the newspaper that, you know, an elephant came into a village, a leopard came into a village. The other day in Pune, there were rains, the crocodile came onto the roads. So these are all examples of life is not able to survive in its own home. And when they move out, it is initial signs of migration. So I would say it is already underway, except that we are not reading it in our news regularly. Yeah.
So we have Devavrata Mohanty. Please unmute yourself and ask the question, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon to one and all. And it was a nice presentation, ma'am. Actually, I'm going to ask you, like you said, pre-industrialization, we had less problems. And post-industrialization, we are having started developing many problems and all. So whenever we are going a few steps ahead towards biodiversity conservation, don't we think that we are going 10 steps backwards because of industrialization and our human activities? So
Yes, sir.
is there any point of that we'll reach at at a point that we can supersede that? Because without awareness and without the human intervention again in a positive way, we cannot go. And
So,
industries are like,
yeah.
I'll give you an instance. Like we were using we are using a toothbrush,
Neem,
but our ancestors used that neem,
neem stick.
and that was much better. They didn't have any problem. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they didn't have any
So,
problem. Are we not
see,
faked into the industries?
yeah. See,
Knowingly we are doing it.
see, we as a species will always look forward. We will not go back. That is a unwritten mandate, and how much ever individual people will want to make a change, you may change to a neem stick, I may not change. And tomorrow, if you tell me stop using fossil fuels, how will I even travel, right? So, saying and doing are two very different things. And when it actually comes to doing, even what we are doing today, we think, okay, instead of traveling to one place, we are now connecting digitally, so we are doing some saving. May not be. You know, the computers that are powering this up and the internet, whatever usage that we are doing, some database systems are helping it out, and there is some CPU that's being used that will need to be pulled down. So whatever activity we are doing, at least this is my personal opinion, not from Dharmavana or any of that. It's very difficult to sort of go back. Okay, we can change. Like the Prime Minister has announced a program called Life, where you change your lifestyle to make it much more less consumeristic, so to say. But is it at a scale where we are able to sort of go back and undo? No. But maybe the solution is that we find alternative energies which are less polluting, which is what scientists are looking at, which is what the entire world is looking at. Or like the CCUS that I mentioned earlier, there may be some technology that tomorrow can absorb the carbon that's there in the air and put it back into the earth from where we pulled it out. And then maybe we'll find something or discover or invent or build that's at scale. Small solutions will not solve. Because today, even if you and me do and someone sitting in China does not do it, we're still under the same problem because there's a global problem. So entire humanity coming together, we thought will happen after COVID, right? Everyone during COVID thought, oh, we've seen the worst and now we will all be peaceful. And immediately after that, we have 2 wars going on now. So human beings as a species are, I doubt we will change, either we'll perish being like this. But the hope is always that we wake up and we do something to fix it, which may be science, which may be change of lifestyle, but it cannot happen in pockets. It needs to apply for everyone, which is a much bigger task. Sorry, I can't hear you, Debrati.
Okay, I was muted. One more thing I want to add, like you're guiding it through. Many people are just going on recklessly planting on trees, but that will bring on havoc like rainfall, excessive rainfall, and please guide them through that an ecosystem should be created to maintain those trees too. Because without that, rainfall will massively, like we are seeing cloudbursts nowadays because we are recklessly not cutting down but planting trees without the knowledge that we have to create that ecosystem throughout.
Yeah, today we
Thank
touched
you
upon just
so much for doing that wonderful work.
Yeah, thank you. Today we touched upon biodiversity.
Yeah,
We
that
talked
was
about
what
climate change. Yeah, that's another deep, bigger topic that will need its own session. But you're right. I mean, but unfortunately, I do not have the leeway to sort of control this.
No,
but the governments are doing their bit. Yeah,
ma'am, actually.
Sorry,
yeah, but I would request you that you are doing it in a very good way, and you should always guide people, those who are around. Even we will we would like to collaboratively work with different projects. In my local areas, I'll be working in those projects. So we can share ideas and we can do such things. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Devrita. And we have a question from Abhijit Patnaik.
Yes, good morning all. Yes, early morning to all. So I'm working as a JRF at NMPB, National Medicinal Plant Board, IUS. Reconnectedly, previously I was working at IAP, Institute of Forest Productivity, Ranchi. Though I have wandered seven states of our India, and from the 7 state, I have collected more than 60 medicinal planted. Medicinal plant, and we have also a landscape of landscape. We have built some landscape in our village. We have 3 landscape. One is a fruit variety, one is a graveyard, and another is a local roadsides. So I'm working on it very efficiently from 5 to 6 years from my BSc careers, BSc botany careers. So apparently, I think that before going to the biodiversity creations, we should know about the biodiversity what we have. So we should know the plant taxonomy first. So above all, I know that Indian plant taxonomy is in a crisis. So we are not able to find, we are now not able to know the plants, which plant is this. So FLRST, I have gone through the FLRST of Bangalore, where they have working on the forest local health organizations. They have been developing they're developing in people that how should they get to know the plants and the benefits from it.
Yes.
So nature
Thank you, sir. I agree with you. We are way behind in our documentation of our own species. So in Dharmavana, we have a center of excellence where we have 2 taxonomists with us, and we are documenting, digitizing, announcing new species and so on. And it's an ongoing effort. But saying that again, across the country, the biodiversity boards are also documenting. But it's an endless effort. I mean, and a continuous one. And thank you for sharing that you're already doing such tremendous work, the concern.
Thank you so much. We will reconnect each other so
Sure.
that we can share our knowledge.
Sure. I just made a note of your name. We will be in touch.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Javed, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Dr. Javed. I am working here at SRM University, Andhra Pradesh campus as a biodiversity and climate scientist. I would like to understand from you how you are working on through your organization related to the biodiversity and climate change, and if I would like to connect with you, how I can do that.
Sure, sir. Radhika will be sharing.
Bit later. Sorry for that.
Sure. So Radhika will shortly be sharing a email ID with the group, and if you all have any questions, we can certainly connect, sir. And again, like I don't know if you were there since the beginning, but I'm no scientist. So if during the course of the conversation, you are more of a subject matter expert here, I believe that you will have so much more to offer. But we'll surely connect.
Actually, ma'am, though we are organizing a number of the talks, and when it comes to the implementation, particularly to for example, we have a plantation drive, and nobody is aware about for example, the plantation of the right tree at the right place. What I mean to say means I am pitching always as being a biodiversity scientist that it should be the right tree means which is native to that particular place. And people are not having that awareness. Even those who are implementing the policymakers, that they are also not being aware about that. If you will say also means they won't listen, and it is becoming that invasive species after the climate change we have that it's the biggest threat again.
Yes.
So
you've heard other participants saying what can we do about this, and I think Vishwa Foundation can play a role in sort of connecting the citizens who are interested. I'm sure people will turn up for your plantation drive when you connect through the non-profits like Vishwa Foundation.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we have a question. Can you speak about veganism in context of environmental conservation?
Okay. I may not be the right person to answer this. I'm a non-vegetarian. I eat everything. I'm trying to change, but it's hard. I love my food. But in terms of as a concept of veganism, I think it started with stopping the cruelty to animals. That is the philosophy of veganism. Is it going to save biodiversity? There are again contrasting views. One of the biggest identified pollutants or causes of greenhouse gases is the cattle stock. And when I say cattle stock, I mean the stock which is used for beef. So they're one of the biggest species as a head count, if you were to see after humans. The amount of grassland that we keep aside for these animals to graze on is making sure that we don't grow any trees there. So yes, it is a what should I say, having so much livestock to support meat eating people is a problem. Are we having answers for it immediately? There is a sensitization and change coming in, but not at the scale that we need. It is not that bad in India because we have our own way of sort of industrializing this food supply when it comes to chicken, poultry, or meat. It is much more grounded in reality. We don't go to the industrial level scale of mass production of beef or chicken or mutton. In other countries, in the West, it is a huge issue. So will veganism help it? Maybe yes, maybe not, because again, with veganism, the problem is for protein supply, I want to stop taking dairy, then I will shift to something like soya or something else that gives me the protein. And if that bulk production again overtakes everything else, that is another side of things. But I'm no scientist to say this, but it is a problem that needs a solution is all I can say right now. Yeah.
So we'll take last two questions, ma'am. Temperature is rising in terms of number of days, and the rainfall is erratic. And how low and how can I save the plant and wild animals?
Sir, whoever has asked this question, there is a huge topic on climate change that will need its own session, I would say. But what the entire world is now seeing is that the climate is erratic. They're calling it as drought or burst. So even in places which are deserts, you're seeing sudden rainfall like we've seen in Dubai, or a place that receives a lot of rainfall, suddenly there is a drought situation. So to sort of give an one-line answer, we have to read up on climate change. Internet is your best source. How do we actually curtail it? Scientists say that the easiest way is to first stop burning fossil fuels, which means that you and me cannot use transport. Are we ready for it is the question actually. And if you look at what is causing climate change, again, the biggest one is fossil fuels. After that, agriculture. After that, even concrete is a problem. So will we stop staying in these buildings or stop building new buildings? We don't have an alternate to concrete. So these are really, really tough questions. And again, there is no single bullet answer. Like there's no one arrow that will go and say with this, the entire problem will get solved. It's like you need 1,000 solutions to fix 1,000 problems, and maybe then we'll see it.
There's a question from Nagarajan. What is your opinion on Kerala disaster? It is highly conserving its biodiversity.
I did read up, but this is all from news. And I also saw that the state government gave a mandate that stop talking about this topic and giving your expert opinions. But of course, there are varying views of how monoplantation has caused it. So they did not actually remove the greenery, but trees were planted, but it was not a biodiversity rich plantation. It was a one particular plantation like cardamom or another one. There are others that are talking about how human interventions of building so many roads, over tourism, you and me going to Wayanad for our holidays also has resulted in this. So again, difficult topic. I think it's very easy to sit here and say this caused it. I'm sure there are a mix of factors. All we can do is to protect ourselves in the future, where human intervention has caused this. Can we stop it is the question again. Will we stop going to Wayanad as a holiday? Will they stop building holiday homes? Will they stop cutting the trees? It is their livelihood. So who are we to question it, right? And this is where the balance of first understanding the issue and each citizen sort of understanding it to the core of how our actions are affecting may give us the answers. No single answer again. I apologize for that. Yeah.
Dr. Santosh Sharma is asked, how can we go about biodiversity conservation from the impact of climate change in biodiversity hotspots, for example, Eastern Himalayas?
Sir, there are a lot of conservation activities that are going on, both from the government's perspective and also non-profits like ours that are trying to do this. How can private citizens participate in this is first for us to understand. And second is, if there is someone else doing it, do not stop them. Third is, if there is any way that you can support either with your help monetarily or otherwise, join in that program. But Himalayas are a sensitive subject right now. I think 6-7 months ago, we saw what the scientists call as GFOL, I think, where glaciers sort of overflow. And when glaciers sort of hit out, then the lakes overflow. And then it becomes like what you saw in Kerala is like a landslide. An equivalent of that in Sikkim or any of the Himalayan places would be massive, not just sliding of the entire hillside, but also the lakes sort of burst out into floods. And that causes obviously a lot of human loss, life loss, and so on. Is there any one answer to stop it? Again, like I said, this is a global problem. One person doing anything, or we collectively handful of people doing, will only go to a certain extent. It's the entire global effort that will be needed in one go.
So there's Mr. Suman who has raised his hand. So please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Madam, actually, I came last to the session, but I am from this field and I am working on all these things. I'm a doctorate in environmental science. My question is, so many speakers nowadays, solutions are there. Everybody knows. Only the need of the hour is to act and start somewhere.
True, sir.
We have to start. Otherwise, there are solutions. Everybody knows also. We can start with small steps. And if you want to go deep, there are different reports from IPCC, science-based targets, and there are so many reports. IPCC is the best reports. Every year they publish. But that are all different. But what we are doing, what we can do, it is the ultimate question. Like growing our own food or composting backyard.
Yes.
Simple steps we can do. It requires no money or small money. That's all.
Yes,
so many things are there. Definitely your work is very encouraging, and I seen your website and your Facebook, your LinkedIn page, and definitely now it's time to go forward and do something to our Mother Earth. Otherwise, we should not blame our governments or policymakers. They are doing their best and they have their own commitments. But as a citizen, we can raise the voice and ask them why we are doing, because ultimately we are selecting them. We are voting for them.
Yes, sir. Very true. Yeah,
so,
thank you.
I think again in the current budget that our finance minister announced, the first time she spoke about something called as climate finance taxonomy. You can look it up, sir. So that's the first time that something in the budget has been spoken about this. So, like you said, it is up to us, and programs like this help sensitize the populations, and hopefully that will mean that we take better decisions. Thank you, sir.
So thank you, Mr. Suman. And yeah, we are good to close the session. And thank you. I thank all the participants who have joined in today and made this session a very interactive session. And I request all of you to take a moment to subscribe to our channels on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn for more updates on upcoming events and talks that we host. And I request our speaker to join in the breakout room that you have on your screen. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.
You can drop your questions in the chat box if you have any more queries. We will let the speaker know and we'll revert back on email. Thank you.